Hey, welcome to Big Sexy Chat. This is Crystal. I am one of your hosts, and tonight, so excited that we have a special host. She's our producer slash editor slash gal about town, does it all for us, makes graphics for us, all the good stuff. And we have a very special guest, my friend Jen McLellan from Plus Mommy and Plus Size Birth. And Jen and I met at the Body Love Conference in Phoenix. Was it? No, Tucson. 2014.
A million years ago.
It feels like
it feels like it, right?
It was when I was in the middle of that brouhaha with that bitch, the fit mom.
Right? I remember that.
Yeah, so a
You've
nightmare.
been in a lot of brouhahas over the years that we've been friends, Crystal.
Yeah, I know. I'm so controversial. And then, I got Facebook jail for 30 days once for posting that Halloweeny. Bad girl. Anyway, it's such a pleasure to have Jen here. We met at the Body Love Conference. We hit it off right away. I gave her a sex toy. I gave everybody vibrators when I was there. It was so much fun. I met so many great, amazing people. Sonia Renee Taylor, Pia. I met Pia there. And of course, it was Jen McLellan. No, not Jess Baker's. You're Jen McLellan. Jess Baker, the militant baker. It was her event. And it was so amazing. Oh, I met Tess there, and also cute blonde Megan Tonjas.
Yes.
Met her there. Who else did we meet?
Whitney Way Thor was there.
Whitney was there. Whitney,
world famous Bob.
Yeah, that's right.
It felt like a really special time, and it was before a lot of these creators blew up. Right. And it was before Instagram too. And so it's been neat to watch people like write books and be on the cover of People magazine and have all these incredible experiences. But the best of it was just being in a room with fat, happy people living their best lives and like wearing clothes that you just felt so good at and you didn't care. And it just felt, it just was a very special moment.
Remember how it used to be when there was only two places to shop, and then you'd go to an event where there's a lot of fat people like, I have that blouse, I have that skirt, I have those tights. Because now there's more. It used to just be those two stores at the mall. But now there's many more places to buy fat clothes online, thank goodness. Anyway, I'm so excited. So here, let me tell you a little bit more about Jen. She's the founder of Plus Size Birth. She has an ebook. She's also the founder of Plus Mommy. She's a blogger, and she's a podcaster, and your podcast is called Plus Mommy?
Yeah, the Plus Mommy podcast, and the tagline is From Bumps to Bellies, we talk about it all. So covering a lot around plus-size pregnancy, but also motherhood and everything in between, like, going to Disneyland in a fat body and how size accommodating is it? So lots of different topics. Definitely need more sex talk. So Crystal, I need you on my show.
Sure. Now that my cough
Crystal knows sex talks.
Now that my cough is starting to get a little bit better, it's easier for me to be on a podcast. But tonight you'll see me push the mute button a lot because in case I have to cough, I don't want to cough in Asherlee's ear when she's editing. Well, Jen, we're so happy to have you. We're so excited to have you. And Asherlee, thank you for filling in. Yeah. Merf is at some fun event, and she has the night off. So Asherlee was willing to step in. And Asherlee happens to be the mother of two kids. And one has special needs?
Yes. My youngest has ODD and extreme anxiety disorder. So all the fun.
And Jen has the most adorable son. He's so cute. Oh my goodness. Is it Brayden?
Very kind of you to say yes. Now he's a tween, so a little less cute, but no, he's still sweetie.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, I have a 12-year-old.
Yeah, mine's going to be 12.
I had like a toddler.
Yeah, we met in Denver too, and I got to meet him. So
Isn't it crazy how fast they grow? Like 1 second they're 5, and then the next second they're like, "Excuse me, can I get some Robux?"
Right. Yes.
My aunt kind of took care of me in my first couple of years of my life because she dropped out of high school for an awful reason. But she says, Crystal, it's not turning 70 that's hard. It's knowing that you're turning 55. I'm like, sorry. We all age. I feel like it's a privilege to age. It's better than the opposite. So
it is.
Yeah.
So Jen, tonight we want to talk a little bit about what you do. Tell people more about what you do, and then why are so many people confused fat women, fat people have been having babies for a millennia. Why now is there so much concern? If you're pregnant and fat, it's going to be bad and blah, blah, blah. And all these doctors say all these awful things to people. And why are people, I mean, I know why, but tell me more. Like, tell me, how do people deal with that?
Sure. I mean, I got into this work because I was fat and found out I was pregnant. We were starting our family and I went online and there was just all this doom and gloom. Like, you're going to have a cesarean birth. You're a bad person for wanting to become a parent in a larger body and just like all this negativity. And I went on and had a completely healthy pregnancy. I gave birth on my knees in a hospital and had this total transformative experience. And I'm like, okay, I'm not the first fat woman to have a vaginal birth, but that's what the internet made me feel, right? And it was so hard to find even clothes that fit my body. So in April of 2011, I started a blog having no idea what it was to blog, and it took off and changed my life. And I became a certified childbirth educator, and I've traveled the country speaking to care providers about weight bias and maternity care. I've even collaborated with the National Institutes of Health for their Pregnancy for Every Body initiative to really create change in everything that you just said on the stigma associated with pregnancy in a larger body. And there are some increased risks, but there are some increased risks when you're over the age of 35, right? Like,
right, yeah.
There's no one thing that only people in larger bodies experience during pregnancy, but we're made to feel like ticking time bombs.
Oh yeah, if a fat person gets gestational diabetes, but thin pregnant people get gestational diabetes too.
Let's look at gestational diabetes. One of my favorite things to do is talk about the difference between relative risk and actual risk.
Cool.
Because when we hear about, anything really of an increased risk it doesn't even need to be pregnancy, right? You'll always hear like, oh, people of size, and yet they're using the O word, right, are 4 to 5 times more likely to get XYZ. And so in this case, 4 to 5 times more likely to incur gestational diabetes. And I think, like, I don't know about you two, but I'm like, 4 to 5 times. Oh my gosh, is that like 40%, 50%? Like, what does that mean? And what that means is it's relative risk. They're looking at my risk factor in a larger body compared to someone with the air quotes normal BMI. And they're just comparing our two risk factors. And so, yes, existing in a larger body, I'm 4 to 5 times at a greater risk than someone existing in a smaller body to incur gestational diabetes. But when we look at the actual risk, what is my actual risk percentage with a BMI over 40? It's 17%. So I encourage people to flip the script and be like, wow, you have an over 80% chance of not incurring gestational diabetes, and that number is not fixed. We have studies to show that, physical activity and nutrition can play a role too, and reducing stress. So there's no real fixed number, but the numbers were taught and, just made to feel ashamed of ourselves so often as fat individuals. A lot of it's so great to look at your doctor when they say something like 4 to 5 times more likely, and just look at them and smile and be like, oh, that's interesting. So that's my relative risk. What is my actual risk? And odds are they're not going to know that number offhand, but at least you can sit there knowing that it's almost always significantly smaller than we're led to believe when we only hear relative risk.
And, I know people need to hear that. Go ahead, Asherlee.
I was just going to say, I would then ask them and challenge that and be like, now, is my risk higher for if I'm stressed or if I'm overweight? Because if it's stress, you are adding stress to me right now, ma'am. Yes. So right. I feel like you're going to cause this more than me being fat. Thank you.
All fat stigma, right? All that causes all of us to have more.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are so mean to us. The main reason why people don't want to be fat, because they know how mean we're treated. They're like, oh, no, I don't want any of that. I got to stay thin. Yeah.
And there's studies, right, to show that when someone of size feels shamed by their care provider, they are more likely to gain weight and less likely to receive routine health care. Yep. So I always say whenever I'm talking in front of care providers, like, shame is not an effective tool. And then I'll pause and then I'll repeat myself, like, shame is not an effective tool. So this needs to stop.
Yeah, yep. I was talking about some fat shaming that I got kind of from my doctor the other day. And I saw a couple of people say, yeah, that's why I never go. And I'm like, so you're not getting your well woman examination. You're not getting your mammary, what's it called? The
mammogram?
Mammogram. Oh my God, mammogram. They're not getting any of that. And people say, oh, fat people die younger, which isn't true. But if we do, it's probably because of all the shame that we've received, because it does create cortisol in our bodies. My friend was pregnant and they said, look, if having 2 ounces or 3 ounces of wine reduces the cortisol in your body, have it while you're pregnant. Because the cortisol is the worst thing. And that's what might trigger us to overeat, to binge, to not exercise, get depressed, not leave our beds.
Yeah, stress is a biggie. And we have plenty of studies to show that when someone, is shamed, that we have even more, like you just said, adverse health reactions. And that's why I spend so much time educating people on how to connect with a size-friendly care provider. And that's so important. But I know we can touch upon like the ridiculousness of BMI, which I'm sure comes up often, so yes. I don't need to go into that. But BMI restrictions play a role in fertility access. In some countries, the ability to adopt.
That pisses me off.
Access to the midwifery model of care, being able to give birth in a birth center, access to water birth, access to gender-affirming health care, the cost of health insurance, like the list goes on and on and on, but it really, really impacts people during pregnancy as well.
Well, and the other thing with that is, with those exact type of things, right? You also can't be a fat woman and be a surrogate. Like, my body loves being pregnant. I cannot have another child at this point in my life. Like, I don't have the space for that, but I would love to be able to help provide that for somebody who needs it or wants it, like who can take that love and give that to a child. And I'm not allowed to do that because I have a fat body. And it's like, fucking why?
Right. Right. And there are loopholes. I've definitely interviewed people who've become surrogates for my podcast, but the amount of hoops they had to jump through, and some even like breaking rules, it's just like, this is not how it should be at all. Like, parenthood should not have a weight limit. We need to be looking at people's individual health. We all can have different risk factors depending upon our size and health history and all these different things, but there shouldn't be
genetics,
one number, that cuts off anything and everything for everyone. It's very, very frustrating. And the thing about pregnancy specifically is, like, for people who are pregnant, they are pregnant, right? So, like, we need to meet them where they're at and not shame them about weight loss, because we know the Institutes of Medicine and even the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, ACOG, does not recommend weight loss during pregnancy. Yet some care providers are still telling people that they need to do this. And a lot of the new drugs that everyone's talking about for weight loss, they're not safe at all during pregnancy. We know they're not safe. So if someone's taking them and they don't find out they're pregnant right away, like, I have so many concerns.
Are you talking about like Ozempic and Mounjaro and all those? Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a whole other story. But so I've never had kids. I've never really. I did have a little pregnancy during the pandemic shutdown.
I remember. Yes.
It turned into a little demon spawn. It turned into cancer. But I've never had a baby, So there's a lot of stuff I don't know about it. But I do know that one thing I know is that cortisol hardens your arteries. Worse than being a cigarette smoker, it's the cortisol. So if you can keep it reduced when you're pregnant and stay away from those fat-phobic effers, try to, because that baby doesn't need that going swimming around in there. They need you to be healthy and not stressed. And don't let doctors put you in that corner. So one of the things I say when doctors tell me that I should go on a diet, I go, oh, sure. Just email me the one you want me to go on. Okay. But also, could you send me some peer reviewed data that shows people keep it off for more than a year or two? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. I'm like, okay, cool. I can't wait. I would love to do that. Guess what? I've never received that email. Not from any of them.
Well, I love that my doctor, my main doctor, he has this question that he's always asking. And I wish that more doctors, whether it's OB, GYNs, or whatever field therein. I wish that they would ask themselves these questions, because the question that he always drives him is, what is health? Like, what is it for? Because it's going to be different for every single body. So, I mean, you can't just, so like wondering what is health instead of, I know what health is, would change how they interact with people. It would change how they engage with their patients, with other physicians. I mean, I think it would change so many things if they would, instead of going, I am the authority on health, they would go, what is health?
I love that. That's really powerful. And I think it's important too for us as consumers to know that we don't have to do what our care providers recommend, and we can fire our care providers, right? And we can seek out new care. But there are so many obstacles to that, whether it be just the financial means to like go to multiple appointments, to have childcare, to be able to get to different appointments, limits around, you know, health insurance or Medicaid or whatever the issues are. There are barriers, but ultimately, as mentally competent adults, we are our own, like, we know our bodies best, and we can decide what we feel is best for our bodies. And that's really critically important for us to remember. But those power dynamics are tough, especially if you have a provider that isn't giving you a gown or a drape that fits your body. So here you are, you know, not fully covered, having your dignity stripped from you, and then being told you need to do X, Y, and Z. That is not okay. So finding those care providers that, like you just shared, Ash, I love that. What is health, and making sure they have the equipment, especially the blood pressure cuff that fits your arm correctly. Yeah. So you're not diagnosed with high blood pressure. Like, if you walk into a doctor's office and you don't even have a place to sit comfortably and all the chairs have arms, like, immediate red flags. And these
pisses
are
me
all
off.
such simple things, right? Like chairs without arms, a blood pressure cuff, a larger one is like $20. Like, this isn't, you know, huge ass at all.
You know, I know this happens for people who are pregnant as well. One time I thought I scratched the cornea of my eye, and I went to like one of those like doctor in a box store places like acute care or whatever. And they just could not believe I had such low, perfect blood pressure. So they took it like 4 times. Finally, the doctor comes out. She goes, "What's taking so long?" I go, "This is her 4th time taking my blood pressure." I don't think she believes me. And she's like, and the lady starts walking to the room. She's going to take it one more time. And I'm like, I was there for my eye. And like,
oh my gosh.
I'm sure that happens to pregnant. Does that happen to pregnant people too?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, another thing with blood pressure that's important to know and advocate for yourself is that they shouldn't be taking it right after they weighed you. And that's a whole nother thing we can talk about. You don't have to be weighed, or there's different ways that you can be weighed that might be more comfortable for you. But when they bring you back right after they weigh you and be like, okay, now I'm going to take your blood pressure, like, you really can advocate to, no. Let's take my blood pressure at the end, or I want to wait. And the correct, appropriate way to have your blood pressure taken is to be seated for at least 5 minutes with your feet firmly planted on the floor. Now, how often does that happen? Hardly ever. So if you do get a high reading and that's not something that's normal for you, then advocate, can we take it again later? So yeah, you might have it more than once taken like Crystal did, but this is with the best intentions this time, right? And really advocating to have your feet firmly planted on the floor where you're comfortably seated, not in a chair that doesn't fit your body comfortably.
Yeah, I had my oldest, they had a sore throat. They weren't feeling good. So I took them to like a doctor in a box type of thing. We have Zoom care up here in Oregon. I took them to Zoom care because of a sore throat, and like, you know, went in, immediately took their blood pressure, and the doctor comes rushing out to me and is like, "I think you need to take your child immediately to the urgent care. Their blood pressure is way too high." And I'm like, we're not even here for this. And also, they've been in there for 2 seconds. They just walked back. They can barely breathe because they've got a sore throat and a stuffy nose. Can you give them 5 seconds and then reanalyze this before you're like, go to the urgent care because they're going to have a heart attack? Like, what? Right now, seriously, what? So, it happens. Even to, I mean, you know, my children take after, you know, me. We're not in small bodies. So like, they're a larger body-ish, but like still relatively, you know, probably like size 16, 18. But like, come on, man. Like, just not enough.
And the right size cuff is also very important, and probably would have been for your oldest too. I'm not sure. I know a lot of people in the healthcare industry look at my arms and they go, "Oh, her arms aren't that fat," because my fat's not here. My fat is like, bam. I have a very powerful downstairs. And so I go, "Oh, but I still want the big one." And I almost didn't get my surgery and my hysterectomy and take care of my cancer, Jen, because they were like, "Oh no, your blood pressure." I asked the lady 5 times for the larger cuff. It was wrapped up in that plastic and she didn't want to take another one out. I'm like, it's not your money. It's Kaiser. They're going to be okay for that 20 cents. And then after they finally did it, I was like, everybody in the room, you guys need to all hear this. If you ever have to take the blood pressure for a large person, if they ask for the large cuff, or just use the larger cuff. And I was like, I don't care how fat my arm is. I am fat. Use the large cuff. It's pretty easy to tell I'm a fat person. So mad.
I know. I wish we didn't have to advocate so hard. I can't believe. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry.
I'm so used to it.
But we can see that too with like in pregnancy inductions of labor for concerns of high blood pressure. So it is really important whether you're going in for surgery or pregnancy or for when we're watching our kiddos at the pediatrician's office to be advocating for what we all need, because it's our care provider's job to provide us with overall health care and looking at our baselines, right? Like, it's good information to have because maybe we do have high blood pressure. Maybe we don't. It can happen to people of all sizes. So advocating for the care that we deserve and the care that should be given to us without us having to advocate for it. My goodness.
It's the stuff that people that are in smaller bodies just get automatically, right? Respect, dignity, good care. We have to like beg for it, and that pisses me off. So that kind of brings me to the question about one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here. Let's say your child's going to grow up to be a doctor or a nurse or whatever. How do we raise kids to not become fat-phobic a-holes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, right? Like, I think it's a fear of ours. And then also, we don't want our kids to be made fun of either if they exist in larger bodies. So how do we raise body positive kids? And I think it starts with us unpacking our own fat phobia, right? Like, I exist in a larger body. I do this advocacy work. I've done it for over a decade. And yet I took the Harvard implicit bias test, which you can take for free on Harvard's website. I'll give you the link, Crystal, to add. And you're literally just hitting buttons, right? You're trying to match up body sizes with words. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem. And I had a much higher bias percentage than I was even expecting because this is so ingrained in our society. So even if you're like, oh, heck yeah, I listen to Big Sexy Chat because I'm a big sexy person and I know all this stuff, I can tell you that like I do this for professionally for a job and I still don't know all this stuff, right? So working through our own weight bias, reading books from a lot of the amazing people that you listed off at the beginning of this conversation, Crystal, listening to podcasts like this one and listening to the lived experiences of plus size people, learning how to be your own best advocate, and really listening to the language that you use when you talk about your body and when you talk about food. Because for those listening that still have a scale at home, which I don't because it's triggering for me and it's not something that I want. But like if you're standing on the scale and that determines how you feel about your body that day, it's going to be your kids standing in the doorway watching that if they see you all doom and gloom because you're up 2 pounds, they're going to start to internalize that. If you sneak food and have a candy stash or you binge, you hide food. Thank you. You might think that you're hiding it, but your kids know, right? They know so much more than we realize. So working through any disordered eating that you might have, really tuning in to intuitive eating and talking to your kids that there are no good foods or bad foods. There are muscle foods, right? And, sugar is delicious and wonderful, but sometimes if we eat a lot, it makes our tummies kind of hurt. So how does that feel? And listening to our bodies, which our kids can do so much better than so many of us that have spent our whole lives dieting and not learning how to intuitively eat. I think also having role models and books and movies for our children with bodies of all sizes. And thankfully, we're seeing that more and more in children's books, which is so incredibly important, right? We want to see bodies of all colors, sizes, abilities, because we don't want to raise assholes, right?
Right.
So it starts with us, and then there's all these other things that we can do.
Make it so that I don't want to punch your kid in the throat, okay? Because sometimes that's how I feel about kids. I'm like, especially teenagers. Yeah, we have to model it at home, right? And we have to help them learn, because I know they get some messaging at school.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
They'll talk about good foods and bad foods, and what does your mommy, send you today with, what, that's too much sugar, or I don't know what the teachers do, but it's along the lines of having this like bumper sticker on your refrigerator, which one of my family members used to have, which is, nothing tastes as good as being thin. And I'm like, okay, that's great for these kids that live here. And you know what? These kids now are adults, and all they worry about is dieting. They all diet all the time. Breaks my heart. They're both thin.
They still see it everywhere. I mean,
I know.
Like, I mean, with Jen here, I mean, I'm part of this. I advocate for the fat community. I'm part of it. I love it. I fill my kids with as much of this information as I can all the time, make sure they're surrounded by these things. And even still, like, even with teaching them empathy, because I think that's something that I would add also is really with making sure that they're not an asshole, is like really trying to work on empathy with them.
Yeah.
But and giving them opportunities to be empathetic, and giving them opportunities to, asking them, like, how would you handle this situation? How would, but also, even with all those things, they still are going to have friends at school who are thin. They're still going to see TV shows with thin people. They're still going to be surrounded by that messaging everywhere. And this is something that is so ingrained in us in society that no matter what we do, there's some of this part, like there's some part of it they're still internalizing. And I see this because my daughter, my 12-year-old, she just a couple weeks ago, even, she was just like, I don't want to be fat. I want to be like my friends. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay. I'm like, huh. All right, let's work through this, And so we have to have a lot of big conversations. And it's like, why are you feeling that way? Like, what's making you think that? What's making you feel that? Because really what it comes down to is a feeling. So it's maybe not necessarily about being fat. It might be about being accepted. It might be about being, as popular as you're seeing your other friends, and like not realizing that they're feeling the same way you are, but they don't look like it. They carry it different. The confidence is different. I mean, there's so many different things, but it's like, teaching them those things is hard at any size.
And yes. I love all that you said so much, and reminding ourselves to say to our kids and to say to ourselves that all bodies are good bodies, and how boring would life look if we all look the same. And I think also holding space for ourselves. I mean, I'll never forget my kid being like, Mommy, how'd you get so fat? Like, I'm just like, I gave myself a minute. I was glad we were driving and I wasn't staring at him, right? Like, we need to give ourselves moments to feel all the feels that we do, so we can be the very best parents in those moments, because it's not always easy and it will come up. And I just remind my kid, all bodies are good bodies, and, not really focusing in on even trying to be body neutral, I think, is something that I've been working on a lot, especially with a teenager, of like, they're all good bodies and look at what our body can do. And another really good tip is with sports. Any sport that has a team aspect to it can be harder for kids that aren't as athletic, but we know that sports can build confidence. So finding a solo sport, whether it be swimming or martial arts or aerobics, so they're watching their abilities and their own strength continue to build upon itself. Like my son did swimming, and it was so exciting to watch, like, how he got stronger and faster and learned different strokes. And he wasn't comparing himself to anyone else, but what he did the week previously that can really help to build their self-esteem as well.
And I think there's also something to point out with that, is there's also a big difference in I know this is like, we're going with gender structure here, but like female and male hormones as they're going through puberty and all these other things as they're growing up, things develop at different times. And then we have our trans community, we have our kids who are really trying to figure themselves out. There are so many things happening, but like, you know, some of those kids are not going to be as athletic. And if we try to push them to be athletic, like they're not going to do very well. And that's going to deplete their confidence and it's going to make them meaner and angrier. And I mean, there's just so many different dynamics. So really being in tune with your kids and your friends' kids and whoever, like whatever kids you're around, and getting grace to them also. Like, it's not easy to be a kid. We are now past that point, right? Like, so we are always like, gosh, why can't you get that? You know, like, why don't you understand? Why are you being such a little asshole? And it's like, God, man, I remember, I think I was probably an asshole when I was a kid. I didn't intend to be, but like, you know, if someone had maybe given me grace when I was younger, maybe something would have been a little bit different. But instead of going, you know, God, why are you being such a dick? You know, maybe if someone was like, hey, how is this occurring for you? Right. And I mean, there was, I don't know if we have a quick second for this story, but like one moment that stands out to me so much is I was living in this apartment complex years ago, and there was this little girl, and she was probably in like 5th grade or something, but my youngest tried to be friends with her and her whole little clique. And they were mean. I mean, they were mean. They were little bullies. I hated them. I was so mad at them all the time because they made my kid cry. They made her feel bad. And like, they bullied her. And I was just like, God, you little shits. And I mean, they would talk about her size, and they were not thin people either, but it's just like, stop it. But they were mean. And this girl, like, I kid you not when I'm telling you, I had a confrontation with a 5th grader, and I know how it sounds, but it did not end up the way that I thought it would. So instead, like, as she was coming up to my door, and she brought her whole family to come confront me about the fact that she was bullying my kid. And I opened the door and I looked at her, and I wanted to be like, stop being a little dick. But instead I was like, we don't need to do this. What's happening for you? What is making you feel like this is something you need to do? We have all got so many things happening in life, like so many things. And I get it. You're in 5th grade. You've got your own story. You've got your own troubles. You've got your own stresses. You've got your own like story, but we can support each other and be kind to each other and try to understand where the other person is coming from. We don't have to treat each other this way. Like, can we start over? Can we take from this moment, and you can look at my daughter and you can realize that she is 4 years younger than you. She doesn't understand what you're trying to do. She just wants to be your friend. Like, can you make space for her to be your friend? And if not, can you just tell her that? And then we can move forward. And like, but it was this moment where it was like, instead of me wanting to fight her, which I did.
5th grader?
I was going to go rounds with a 5th grader. And hell hath no fury. Mama, his kid is under attack. But like, I realized like that I didn't need to be that person either. And I could be like, hey, what's going on for you? Why are you feeling like you need to do this? We don't have to.
Was she receptive?
Yeah, she was.
Good.
She hugged me, and they didn't have any more problems after that. It was just like, and I think her older siblings and everything, who I think watched her, they were kind of like, oh, this is okay. Oh, you know what? This is okay. This is all right. Walked away, and I'm like, and then I had to like had that moment where I'm like, bro, I was about to fight a 5th grader.
Yeah. People tease me because I like playing games with my nieces and nephew and beating them. They're like, oh, good job. You beat a 5th grader. I'm like, whatever. I won. You know, it's bad. But you made me think of something, Asherlee. There's some experiences I had personally when I was young. And I'm wondering, how do you guys handle this with your greats, the great grandmas and the grandmas and the aunties? And like, I had some really horrible experiences with my mom's like cousins that we would vacation all the time. My mom swears she's remembering it, and she might not have been there when it happened, but they always said things to me about my body and my body being different. And now when she brings up their names, I'm like, I don't want to see them. The family reunion, I'm like, oh, F them, because they said some horrible things to me about my body. And how do you guys handle that when you have, I'm sure the grandmas have things, they want to give them treats, and you know, they don't know, and or they say, oh, you can't eat that. You've already had dessert already or whatever. How do you handle that stuff?
Boundaries. My life's motto is boundaries are sexy. And I say sexy because they're so hard to implement. But so I say they're sexy because it makes it more fun. But boundaries, I have strict boundaries. And I've talked to even my own mom about how she'll be like, well, that's good for you or that's bad for you. And I was like, no, we don't talk about food in that way at all. That we know can help lead to disordered eating, and no one wants that for Braden. We talk about things in a different way, so it's been kind of like a re-education. But I feel like with every generation of parenting, there's things we have to unlearn and relearn, but it has been setting very clear boundaries and also letting anyone know who interfaces with my child how I feel about certain things, that we're not going to talk about bodies and we're not going to make anyone feel ashamed, because that doesn't do anything good either. So yeah, a lot of boundaries.
Yeah, I echo that. I think that boundaries in every aspect, whether it's food related or emotional related, whatever it might be, whether if it's about my child, boundaries, beep, beep, beep.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to put a little line right here. We don't cross over that. But I mean, I definitely had that. I mean, I know, and my mom did it and still to some extent has done it. I mean, even this as an adult, I mean, to me, she doesn't do it to my kids though. So, and and their grandparents, they just do it to me. So I think it's kind of like this, because I've set up this, nope, if you're going to do it, do it to me and then not around them. And then we have a conversation, or we've, had plenty of conversations here on Big Sexy Chat about how we move past that Fat-Phobia stuff. But it stops here. If we're going to end a cycle of abuse and mistreatment and all these things, this is where it ends. We don't let this continue.
Yes.
Yeah. Someone has to stop. It has to stop the cycle, right? It's like we have to finally eradicate this if we can, but it has to. I think you're right. Each generation gets hopefully better and better and better. Yeah. So Jen, and I think Asherlee, do you have a question for her about the pediatric thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering what you could tell us about, because I know that there were some guidelines that came out from the American Academy of Pediatrics about, giving kids medication for weight loss and things when they're wee little babies.
Yeah, the American Academy of Pediatrics released some new guidelines that were very shocking around children and weight. So definitely all the trigger warnings before we go into this conversation. But they used to have more like a wait and see approach, that, having positive conversations about bodies, it was pretty good. And then, now I feel like all of these health organizations are on this new obesity is a disease camp, right? And so we must treat it as a disease and eradicate it, which, I have so many thoughts and feels. But how that is playing into the new clinical practice guidelines for the American Academy of Pediatrics is looking at children as early as the age of 2, from 2 until 12, looking at doing more aggressive, they call it proactive treatment. So not medication or weight loss surgery, but interventions with more like nutritionists and conversations, and, that. But then it gets very shocking when just the fact that starting at the age of 2 is shocking. But once we hit the age of 12, weight loss medication, recommendations based on BMI, by the way, which the pediatric BMI, I'm pretty sure, is a little bit different than the adult one, the scale. And then, but children 13 and older, who are on the very high end of BMI, weight loss surgery is something now within the clinical guidelines. And, I was being interviewed by NPR about this not that long ago. And I was like, look, there's always going to be certain cases with, kids that might have different hormonal issues that play into weight that are extreme issues, or kids that have really high diabetes. There's always going to be cases where interventions may be needed. that has not changed, right? There's always going to be a small percentage of people that may need certain things that will be conversations between care providers and parents and patients, right? Like, these are things for people of all sizes that have happened and will continue to happen. But to make clinical practice guidelines for everyone to start having these conversations is really scary to me. We think of like, when I was the age of my son now was when I went to my first Weight Watchers meeting with my mom of like, oh, we've got to get this kid to lose weight. And what, all these years later, I'm in my 40s now, we know that diets don't work. And I've cycled up by doing so many diets. So while we have studies looking at these weight loss drugs or, some evidence-based information, which we could unpack so much about that, but they're saying we're standing on evidence with this. It's not from that long. The drugs being recommended aren't even ones that are necessarily designed for weight loss. And even if they were, these are many times, if we're looking at the age of 12, children going through puberty, right? Where Ash, and I know it, our kids get a little rounder and get a little taller, get a little rounder, get a little taller. What happens if we are giving them medication that could, many times the side effects make people physically ill. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like we're signing kids up for disordered eating. So I always like to have a little bit of a balanced conversation because I talk with healthcare providers. So while part of me wants to be like, is this eugenics? Like, are we just trying to eradicate fat people? I try to be a little like, well, yeah, there are some very small percentage of health concerns where certain things might be recommended. But to now make this so entrenched in the guidelines is just really, really terrifying. Makes me wonder, where's kickbacks on drugs, from the pharmaceutical companies? Like, there's just so many questions about, so many things. And it's just really upsetting.
Well, it goes to sorry, Crystal. It goes to make that idea furthered for parents who don't know this information and for the kids and everyone else, that the worst thing you can be is fat.
Yeah.
And it's like, of all the things that I could be a murderer. I could be a terrible person. I could be a con artist. I could be I could scam people out. I could do a million things, but the worst thing is me being fat. Really? Huh.
Also, these drugs that we're talking about, they're made for people with diabetes, right? So people are using it because they're seeing some people are getting losing weight from it. But yeah. I want to remember, if you guys can help me remember this, how does Reagan and like Marilyn Wan, how do they describe weight loss surgery where you're amputating a perfectly healthy organ and basically turning it into a diseased organ?
Yeah, that's basically how Reagan's described it roughly.
Yeah, and to do that to children is just so shocking. I mean, even something as non-invasive, and I'm using air quotes, as medicine, we're now seeing that they would have to be on this medicine for the rest of their lives. Like,
well, and it is invasive. Ozempic is one that you have to shoot. Like you put that in a needle and you shove it in your leg.
But yeah. I'm just saying, like, weight loss surgery is permanent, right? And so there's so many more things and conversations that we need to be having around that. But like, even medication, it isn't just, take it for the short amount of time. Like, it needs to be taken forever. So we're making these, big decisions on children going through puberty. Like, it's just shocking.
Yeah. And there's like growth plates and all the things that are happening in their bodies, and you're going to stunt all of that. But I was also thinking about, the Today Show reporter that pooped his pants at the Obama White House after his weight loss surgery. And sometimes that happens when you have weight loss surgery. So kids are going to poop their pants at school and have to deal with that, I mean, and then,
even medication.
Those
even medication. Oh my gosh.
Those medications make you throw up a bunch.
Yeah, it's really terrifying. So just for some parents listening that are just like, oh my gosh,
right,
it's written within the guidelines that parents can refuse, which we all know, but it's good that it's written in there, because we do know some cases, especially with communities of color and Black parents, that have been given medical recommendations for their children and not felt like it was the appropriate one and had CPS involved. There are like documented cases. So there's real concerns about like, how is this going to implement people and parents in the most marginalized bodies? So I think it's good that there's that within the guidelines that you can say no, and just remembering that. I haven't, this guidelines just came out. I haven't taken my son to his annual pediatrician visit since this came out. But what I can tell you is for the past few years, since he started going through puberty, before we walked into the appointment, every parent's very used to filling out their annual questions on all these things that were asked continuously about growth milestones and all the basics, right? So I've always written on that form for these past few years, happy to talk about physical activity and nutrition. Do not bring up weight or BMI. So I've set that strong boundary because I know what it was like to be shamed by my care providers at a very young age that made me question my health and wellness. So I don't even want that to come up. But by saying, happy to talk about these two other things, we're going to have the same conversation that they want to have. I'm just protecting my kid as much as I can from being shamed in the process. So I absolutely still intend to do that at every appointment. And I would shut down any conversation around things that don't make me comfortable or that aren't against my family's belief. But I'm also a white mom with privilege. So there's so many aspects of this that are just so alarming and concerning, but parents, know that you have rights, know that you can speak up about what is to be said and not to be said, especially in front of your children. And I think Crystal's example earlier of, well, send me an email. I mean, I think that's a good kind of non-confrontational way that if someone's like, well, I do have these concerns about this thing, and like, we're not going to talk about BMI or weight in front of my child, but if you want to send me an email with more information, I'll review it. And, you do with that what you want. But that can be a way, and a non-confrontational way, instead of being like, are you out of your ever-loving mind? Do not talk to my child or me about any of this. But again, you make the decisions that are best for you and your family. And there's always going to be certain cases where we need to make really hard decisions. But I really have deep concerns about these being now, these new guidelines put in place and backed up by the AAP.
And I want to add on to that. Just first, I agree with you. And I think that's a really good idea. I don't know that I've never done that. I haven't thought of that. And so thank you, because just like that permission to write on the form, don't do this. And the reason why this is for me, so my daughter, right, she's got ODD, she's got extreme anxiety. And while we have an amazing family care physician who does not talk about this, psychiatrists. So this goes beyond just the physical, going into the mental health aspect of things, because it's psychiatrists, the mental health workers of the nation, that I am at war with right now for my child, because every single one that I have gone to, every single one, oh, she's on Abilify? Well, we might have to take her off of that because it seems like she's gaining weight. Okay, first of all, we don't have this conversation in front of my child. Yeah. Second of all, I'm done seeing you. We're done. This is not happening. Yeah. Because if your concern for my child's mental well-being is that her body, which is in the middle of going through puberty, is a larger body, if that is your concern, and not the fact that she needs these medications because of the things that she has and that she's going through, and she has to learn these tools to help her stabilize. Like, this should be your focus, not her body. So if you can't focus on that, this is not a good match. We are not going to be seeing you, and we will go try to find another psychiatrist.
Good on you for being that mama bear. It's a full-time job. And yeah, I found it could also be helpful if you have certain concerns before appointments with, not that general care practitioner, but like a psychologist or something like that, to send an email in advance on things we will and won't be talking about, can be helpful. But I'm really sorry that you've had to deal with it, because you're just trying to get your kiddo the help they need. And if a medication is working, almost all medications have side effects, right? So, I'm so sorry.
And it's like, if the biggest side effect is that it might maybe make her or want to eat some more. Like, okay, great. That's fine. We've got lots of fruit and vegetables. There's plenty of things she can snack on. Like, and I'm not going to say, oh, no, you can't have all of that pineapple and peaches. God, you poor dear. Like, it's, I don't get, fine, go for it. And if that's, if that's going to make it so they have issues, then they have issues. And like, they can take that up with me, but we don't talk about that in front of my child. Like, we just don't. But I'm worried about these guidelines, because if it's not just like, if that AAP guideline goes from just physical into the mental health realm, and that's just going to give these psychiatrists even more fuel to be like, so about that Abilify, what your kid actually needs.
I mean, I'd rather have my kid alive, and
right. How about the suicide statistics? Let's talk about that. Like the fact that my child can't cope with the world and society and the things like that should be a bigger concern for you.
Right. Not really. Their body size. Yeah. That's so ridiculous. I'm so sorry that your kids have to go through that.
We're seeing big improvements in the nutritional space with providers being health at every size informed. So I hope that we're going to start seeing that with mental health as well. I mean, statistically, we are of a bigger size as a nation. So financially, as business practitioners, it would be smart for everyone to become size inclusive, because there's a, pun intended, bigger market, right? So I think from just being a decent person and not an asshole, a lot of people are realizing that they need to be size inclusive. But I think people are also realizing that there's a lot of people that just want to be treated with dignity and compassion and have a lot of money that want to pay for services. And so I think that that's a way that you can also vet people in advance to send that email and be like, are you health at every size informed? Like, will you be weight neutral? Like, I was going to do some acupuncture, and I sent an email to them in advance stating, I've been mistreated because of my size by different practitioners. I want to make sure that I won't be mistreated, and I would like to know what size your table goes up to, and can you accommodate me being in a larger body? And it was just so nice to get a message back that was like, of course, I welcome bodies of most sizes, and my table goes up to like 500 pounds. And I know, Crystal, you do that so well with a lot of your work too. So yeah, I think people are catching on far too late to the party, but as parents, there are so many times where it's so hard to fight and advocate, because I'm not going to let you see my kid again, but now I got to start all over again to find another practitioner and go through all these hoops and take time off work to go to all these appointments. And it's so much. And I think also just acknowledging parents of size as parents in fat bodies. Like, I'm wearing my Fat Babe sweatshirt and nice. I'm a happy fat person, but it can be hard to go into a doctor's office with my kid, especially when there's chairs with tight arms, so I can't even sit down comfortably, and try to advocate for my kid when I know that they're looking at, the fat mom in the room. So I just want to hold space. I just want to hold space for any parent of size listening and say, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Ash and Crystal too, that we all hold space for you, and we know that you're amazing advocates and you're doing the very best you can. And sometimes it can just be a little extra hard. So never feel like you can't call back or email later, because in that moment it might be hard to advocate, but whenever you need to, whenever you can be that best advocate, not only for your kid, but for yourself as well.
Yeah, we definitely, I know that all three of us have found our voices, and we're comfortable. I'm comfortable going to Kaiser and being like, this is my favorite question. Am I the fattest person that ever comes here? And they're like, oh gosh, no, you're not fat. No, people, and they're like, oh, people much bigger than me go there. And I said, well, I can't fit. So that means all those other people can't fit either. Oh. I'm like, it's freaking Kaiser, people. I know you have the money to go buy some chairs. Have a mixture of chairs. They just built a new hospital, and I go there and there's no chairs without arms, not even one. I'm like, oh, how many times do I have to write Kaiser's support at Kaiser.com or whatever? I'm like, I can only do it so many times.
I wish I could like count the amount of hours that I've spent researching medical facilities and medical places to go to, just because I go to look at their pictures to see if they have this like space for people. Like, so I'm not going to be like, itty bitty living space. You know, like,
that's me with Yelp and restaurants as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Always.
Well, I just did that for an OB. I mean, that was just one of the things, is trying to find access for an OB for stuff that I went through. And I'm like, nope, this is a cold, sterile, creepy hospital. Nope, this place doesn't have any, this place, there's no elevator and I'd have to climb up 20 flights of stairs to get to. I'm going to go with a hard no on that one. Like, and it's just every single one. I'm like, what the hell? You know, until I found a good one. But it's like, I went through literally an entire list of Blue Cross Blue Shield providers before I found one.
I believe
an entire list. Like,
I believe you 100%.
I'm so sorry. Part of my work with helping people to connect with maternity care teams that are size inclusive is having a size friendly directory. So I'm revamping and doing a full online course on how to be a size friendly provider, specifically for maternity, because that's my expertise. And I need to connect you
with my new OB. She's incredible. And her mission, she's amazing, but her whole mission in life is to make a care accessible to every community and every person who needs it. And it's like, she has made, I walked into her little mobile clinic, a big couch, big squishy couch to sit on, you know, like you walk in and she's like, do you want some water? You know, do you want some seltzer water? Like, just, and she, not someone else, like, she's like, hey, and she's made space, like actually made space for people. Cool. And so it's like, I love that. I want more people to
Why can't we all do that? Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. It's
and
so
I want
bad.
I want to give people hope too. Like, right, a lot of this conversation has been like, oh man, but I will say I interface a lot with younger docs and nurses, and it has been thrilling. You know, I've been doing this work for over a decade now, and in the beginning, people were like, oh, why is plus-size birth even needed? I'm like, because we have a huge crisis here happening with weight bias in maternity care and healthcare in general. But now I have docs that reach out to me and they're like, Jen, I want to be size inclusive. How can I be size inclusive? And I've interviewed quite a few OBs and nurses for the podcast, and it has just been thrilling to have this new awareness of racism, sexism, fat-phobia. And it's not just that they have an awareness because they're younger, it's also being taught in medical school now. And, you know, I wish there wasn't a class needed on how not to be an asshole, you know, and how not to be racist, but clearly it is so needed and we're seeing a good outcome. But what I'm hearing from a lot of the docs is like, yeah, we go to these schools and we're working with diverse communities and we're having all these great experiences, and then they get put in the system. And once they get put in the system, then things fall apart, right? And then they can't necessarily speak up when older docs are doing things. So I'd say we're still got some time before things are hopefully going to be much better. But in the meantime, don't be afraid to look for a younger doctor.
Yeah.
Really don't be anymore, because there's a lot of good training happening now. So there's some hope for y'all that there are so many size-friendly care providers and practitioners out there. It's just, I wish it wasn't so hard to connect with them.
I credit you and Reagan and other people doing the hard work going to these places like the NIH or universities and putting up with bullies and other people that don't believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, you know, you both bring your peer-reviewed evidence. I applaud you, because you guys are the reason why it's getting better. I know it should be going much faster, but it's not going much faster. Also, I saw you on Mary Lambert's list.
Oh, yes.
Providers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I have my, thesizefriendly.com. And so she put together a list. I mean, Reagan, I give her Reagan inspires me. She's been doing a lot of the work, but I've been doing it in maternity care. And, it was fun. And then I had Mary Lambert on my podcast too, which was pretty awesome
to get Mary
interview
to come
her
here. So
okay, I'll have to drop her a note. Yes.
I've been like slyly leaving her comments on her social media. Like, I'm like, oh, you're cold. You know, it would warm you up coming on Big Sexy Chat.
But yeah, she did a lot of legwork with her list of size-friendly care providers and really vetting and making those phone calls and really working to make sure that the information she was putting out there was accurate. So I really commend her, and we need more of that. And I think it's happening. I mean, I'm seeing it more of, you know, I'm so glad that we see more people of color and Black people in marketing materials, you know, as opposed to just, especially maternity. It was always like, only thin white women have babies. And we're like, no, that's a bunch of BS. Like, pregnant people, not just women, and, you know, and people of color and Black people and people with different abilities. But we're now starting to see more images of people of size as well in the healthcare space. And they're not just their heads cut off, right? They're smiling with a family. And so I really do feel in the past over a decade that I've been doing this work, that there is a positive shift happening. And I think for our kids too, right? Like compared to a decade ago, there weren't a lot of books that were very diverse with body sizes. And now I'm interviewing authors that are like writing children's books for all bodies. So I'm really, really hopeful. I just think a lot of us parents have to work through our own trauma and shit that we've gone through. I mean, not just parents, but especially those of us trying to raise really good humans. We've been through a lot, and a lot can be triggering, especially when our kids have no filter and their friends have no filter, and it's rough, man. So sending you all virtual hugs.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And we'll make sure we put Mary Lambert. We'll put her list in the notes too, because it was a really good list. Although I noticed there's none in my hometown, San Jose. So I'm going to call my gyno and ask her, can we put you on this list? Because she is very size accepting.
I gave Mary my doctor.
Oh, good. Okay.
His information, because I was like, he's amazing. And now I want to give her Dr. Mary's information and be
Dr.
like,
Mary's
she's amazing. I know.
I've never met her, but I love her. Yeah,
I have such a crush on her. I'm like, literally, I want to just sing her praises from here until forever.
So happy you found her. So
but I think that's a good thing, Ash, sorry, just to piggyback on that, is like, write reviews if you have great care providers. Like, I go into Facebook now. So many people have Facebook, like, open reviews. And sadly, I've only written, like, stay the hell away from this person if you exist in a larger body. But that's important too, right? Yeah. And so write anywhere that there are reviews so we can all know. And yes, there are these wonderful lists that are ever growing of size-friendly care providers. But I think also for anyone listening, writing reviews can be really effective as well.
Yeah, I agree. I write reviews all the time. I love reading reviews and I love writing them. And I'm like, especially if somebody impresses me or somebody's amazing, like I am not going to be shy about that. I'm like, oh no, don't ever go here. Ever, ever, ever. Or like, only go here. Here is her QR code. Here's her phone number. Here's her address. She is your doctor now.
Yeah, we were thinking about trying to see if we could have her on the show to talk about more about medical fat phobia and her list. So we're gonna keep reaching out to her. So
and her Fat Babe, like
her camps.
Workshop that she does.
Yeah,
I love her and her music.
I have one of her albums on a record, and it is probably the only one that it's amazing to listen to on record. It's amazing.
So we're coming up to that hour, I think, right? Maybe close to the hour. Yep. And I don't know how many of our episodes you've listened to, Jen, but we always ask our guests, what's your favorite sex toy at the very end of our podcast? What's your favorite?
Well, Crystal, you said earlier in 2014 that you gave me a toy, but you also gave me another toy. So I'd like to say that Crystal is giving me mini an orgasm. And my favorite is the Womanizer, and it's still going strong. And I don't like the name, but I love it. It's a good one. So
the name is terrible. It's a German company, and I guess the word womanizer doesn't mean the same thing here as it does there. So it was just like not a good. Yeah. But did you get the extra long one for plus bodies?
Yeah, for plus size bodies.
They don't make it anymore. Yes. I know. I love it.
What? They don't make it anymore?
Not for a long time, actually.
Oh man!
I know, but they still have them. They just don't have any that long. Which, you know, for those of you who are listening maybe for the first time, the reason I like longer toys is because I have a larger lower tummy, and you know, I fat thighs, so it's harder for me to get all up in there to my clitoris. So when you have something that's nice and long, you're not like down in there. You can be like laying down trying to find it, and it's more relaxing, I guess. So you're not in an awkward position and you're not stressed. Yeah, terrible name. The Satisfiers are great too. We love those. In fact, we just talked to Linnea Marie last week, and we did a whole thing about sex toys for fat babes and furniture, and, we talked about the Liberator, which is one of our sponsors. So it was a really fun episode all about sex toys and how to like show up for sex, even if you're fat, with the lights on in the middle of the day. It's okay.
Heck yeah.
Person wants to be with you. And for a lot of people, it's much more fun to be with a person than their hand again or their sex toy again. So, most people are just so happy to have somebody else to have sex with. And so just go with it.
Don't knock it during pregnancy either, because you got a lot more blood flow.
Yes.
So, whether it's with yourself or with a partner, just lots of extra pillows.
Well, and there's so many hormones. Your sex drive is so much higher when you're pregnant most of the time too. It's like, okay, you know what?
Oxytocin.
It's gonna happen right now. I'm not gonna get more pregnant. So.
Although for anyone listening and they're like, I didn't want to be touched during pregnancy, that's okay too. Like, your body, your decision, and not everyone wants all of that. But be open-minded, and maybe you just start with some alone time with one of the great toys that Crystal recommends, because I'm telling you, those are some of the best orgasms I ever had, was with all that extra blood flow.
Second trimester is the horny one?
I mean, it all can be, but yes, the second trimester seems to be the blissful point during pregnancy for most people, for many things, not just orgasms.
You're not super uncomfortable yet. Like you're like getting there, but it's like, I can still do stuff just fine. And so it's just like, this is still kind of fun. But then like towards the end, you're like, maybe don't.
Yeah. Sometimes, you're like, no.
That's when the sex toy would come in handy the most,
absolutely.
I think, honestly.
So Jen, tell everybody where to find you, how to find you. Tell them about your ebook and your podcast. And I know you do so much good work. And if there's anybody out there thinking about having a baby or having another baby, you need to know Jen. You just have to. And she does such good work. I have her ebook, and I've never had a baby, so it's good stuff. It's really affordable, right?
You are the best. I have a audio book too. So the book that you're mentioning is my plus size pregnancy guide. So it covers anything you could ever want to know about being plus size and pregnant. And there's an audio book too, but for everything plus size pregnancy, it's plussizebirth.com and social media as well. And then for everything parenting and body love and all those other good conversations, it's Plus Mommy and the Plus Mommy podcast. I'd love any podcast listeners to come listen to the Plus Mommy podcast as well, because we have a lot of great conversations, and Crystal and Ash will be guests soon, right?
Sure, absolutely. And also a great place to write reviews is for people's podcasts.
Yes, we would all appreciate it, especially everyone listening right now to the Big Sexy Chat. Like, you don't even understand how much it really supports this amazing show if you just leave a really quick review. So I'm totally giving you an ad here, Crystal. Like,
thank you.
Leave a review for Big Sexy Chat, because you're an amazing show, and that helps more people to find it.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I mean, we gotta cheer each other on for sure, because this is interesting work that we're all doing. It's not working in fat liberation and body acceptance is not for the meek. It's very, I even, sometimes I get trolled so hard, or I get like, ooh, but I'm used to it now. I've had some heavy duty trolls, but it's still, and sometimes I still have a bad body image day. Not so much anymore. Yeah. But like,
Crystal, we did a love note to your troll. It just reminded me in like 2015, you and I for Yahoo, right? You brought me in, and wasn't the news crew in your lingerie shop? Yeah, we go way back with trolls. But we also go way back with making a difference, and you've made such a difference in the lives of so many people, Crystal. And I'm so thankful that we've remained such good friends and champions of one another's work. I have your book right behind me. Like, you're amazing. And
thank you.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing with everybody where they can find you. Asherlee, anything else to add before we sign off?
No, I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you for your help today too. Merf, hope you're having a good time. Jen, thank you for everything. I'm so happy to have you, and I can't wait to come on your podcast. And I'm just going to say, see you later, alligator.
I'm going to say, hit the road, happy toad.
I'm going to go with toodaloo, kangaroo.
I love that. And don't forget to check us out on BigSexyChat.com. Everything's there. everything's. And you can write a review there too on our website. And if you want to, you could buy us a cup of coffee for $3. That helps a lot. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Asherlee.
Bye.
Bye.